news, transfer news, match previews, legend interviews, Spurs winning, press conferences, covering everything Tottenham and England.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. Of course, we're here to talk about all things Tottenham Hotspur, but this edition we'll be looking at the tactical side of Ange Ball, discussing the hybrid marking system, the man marking and zonal marking. This one should be an interesting one. We're live on YouTube, on X, and of course Facebook. So please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling right now as a Tottenham Hotspur fan. And most importantly, we have that huge game coming up on Sunday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium against our biggest rivals, Arsenal. It should be an interesting one. Let's hope that Spurs can get back to winning ways on Sunday afternoon. Now, to get into it, I've got three very special guests with me. Back with me is, of course, channel regular Craig Dearman. Craig, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, evening, Chris. Yeah, I'm all good. I love it. The comments already think Gareth looks like Mr. Beast. I bet he wishes he had his money. Didn't know Mr. Beast was a Spurs fan, which is all good. But yeah, no, looking forward to this one. It's a bit different. Something I don't think I've seen anybody else do. So yeah, it's all good.
Well, we're always, of course, trying to do new things on this channel, and thanks to your input, Craig. We've also got Gareth McGuinness back with us, of course, channel regular and UEFA licensed football coach. Gareth, great to have you here again. How are you?
All good, Chris. Just Craig, for he's football coach. Just don't have time for haircuts and shaves, a bit like yourself. So we're too busy. We're too busy working on things. So forgive me for me overgrown beard, but no, I'm actually going on holidays next week, so I'm due in for a haircut. But as you'll find out, Craig, us coaches don't have time to go to barbers and get groomed, so we're all about trying to think of new ways. And like you see with Ange, I'm sure sometimes he looks a wee bit stressed, so we're all going to get on it tonight. Chris, looking forward to it. Always love something different, and I think this show tonight, the viewers are going to really, really enjoy it. They might not agree with it all, but I'm sure lots of them might learn different things, and maybe even things that they've missed will say, and then maybe things they say that we've not seen. So it's going to be really, really good and really fascinating to see what happens over the next couple of hours.
Cannot wait to get into it. And joining us for the very first time on the Spurs Chat podcast is Terry Kim. Terry, of course, is a Korean Spurs fan based in New York. Terry, great to have you here. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Hope you are as well. Unlike Gareth, in anticipation of the show, I did shave this morning, so it's nice to be
professional. Love it. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've been a long-time follower of the channel, and I'm honored to be here with you three gentlemen. So Chris, Craig, Gareth, you and the many guests on the show have been really kind of therapy for me during some of the rough Spurs patches, and more importantly, someone to celebrate and revel with during the good times. So I thank you for that. Frankly, I'm just excited to discuss some football with three fellow fans whose sense of well-being seems to be inextricably linked to the fortunes or misfortunes of Spurs. So thank you again for having me.
Well, thanks for being here, Terry, and thanks for those nice words. It's great that you've been following the channel for some time and enjoying it, by the way. Terry, let's start the show with you. Of course, Ange Postecoglou has been in charge now for around 14 months. Of course, first full season last year with 3 games in so far this season. How are you feeling as a Spurs fan right now?
So I'm afraid of being called a happy clapper here, but I think there's a lot of positives to start the season. I know a lot of people don't like XG, but if you look at our XG numbers, only us and Man City have an XG difference of more than 1 per game this year. So we're actually second in the season, both for in XG and XG against. If you look at all the chances that we've had against Leicester, against Everton, even against Newcastle, they're there. It's just we're very, very close. Like just a couple of goals that could go in here or there. It's a very different mood, I would say, amongst the general Spurs fan base here. I feel like it's a very, very encouraging start to the season. even with people like Romero and Udogie, who seem to be a bit rusty, if you will. Son seems to be a bit off. But I think there are a lot of positives to take from this. And again, it's only 3 games into the season. I mean, this is at minimum. This is 3 out of a minimum 50, hopefully 60 and even 70 games. There's a lot to come to this.
Terry, may I ask why Tottenham Hotspur for you, and what's it like supporting Spurs in New York?
So I don't know if this is a very good answer. It actually started through the FIFA game with some of my friends. I think we chose Tottenham because it was a pretty funny name, and we hadn't really heard of it against the others. We started falling in love with these players that were on there, like these really young players called Kyle Walker and Danny Rose that were on there. And then we started bringing a lot of other players from other teams onto there. And then, of course, as a Korean, once Suns joined the team, started taking a bit more interest in it. The first season I really started watching Spurs was that Leicester season. And then ever since then, just to see how Son has grown, to kind of fall into that pit of Spurs fandom and the ups and downs, the transfers, the big wins, the tough losses. I'm officially hooked. So that's how it started.
Well, it's great to hear. Craig, let's come to you. How are you feeling as a Spurs fan right now? Because, of course, the Arsenal game is not that far away now.
No, apparently I look like Pep Guardiola tonight. Somebody said we've got the stars on tonight, haven't we? I'm. It's funny, isn't it? When you we've had this. I have this every season, every game. When we have a bad result, a loss, I get downhearted, and then as soon as the next game comes around, I get a bit of confidence back, and I think, we could do something. So I'm totally agree with what Terry said. We are only 3 games in, and I get the frustration. I do, and there's parts of tonight's show will make you feel very frustrated when we show what we're going to show you later on. But you've got to look at the bigger picture. I'm still behind Ange 100%. I still think he's the man that's going to do it. And if we were going to change managers, what is the point? We're just jumping from person to person to person. It's not the way forward. It's not the way big clubs act. So we need to trust in Ange and keep backing him. And hopefully he's going to get us over the line. And I'm not even going to say the T words. You know what I mean? Let's hope they're coming.
Gareth, how are you feeling ahead of this North London derby? I know we'll talk about the Arsenal game in depth later on in the show, but how are you feeling after the 3 games so far?
Pretty relaxed, Chris, compared to some elements of the fan base. I think the 3 performances have been solid. Have they been perfect? No. But I think for large spells in all 3 games, well, the Everton game completely, we dominated that, bar 5 minutes before half-time when they had a few corners, but the Leicester game for 57 minutes, I thought we were outstanding. And after the first sort of 15 minutes on Sunday last week, I thought we were outstanding again. So it really has just been we've been very profligate in front of goal. We've been wasteful, but I'll be more concerned if we weren't creating those chances. And we are. I think there's an argument that we've been better in the first 3 games this year than we were last year, and the points don't reflect that. But I don't think we were that great away at Brentford in the first game. United game, we could have been 2 or 3 down in the first half when we won the game 2-0. And the Bournemouth game, we started well, but I think Bournemouth had a whole host of chances in the second half. I think Terry was really right, because I looked at the XG today. Not necessarily I was looking for it, but I can't kind of come up on my X account. We've only conceded just over 3 XG, and we've conceded 3 goals. So literally everything that's been supposed to go on hasn't done. And if you look at our XG compared to what we should have, it's well down. So look, the stats are telling you that Spurs are going to get more points if they keep playing this way. So I will be very relaxed. And I know we're going to speak about the Arsenal game later on, but I am confident we will get a result this weekend if we play the way we have, because I don't think Arsenal's playing that well. But the danger with Arsenal is they don't have to play well, they won. And we're capable of self-destructing and making crucial errors. And that's probably will be the worry more than us not. I mean, I'll be shocked if we didn't turn up and play. I think we'll be right at it, but it's just we're better than Arsenal in both boxes. Because between the boxes we've been very, very good in these first 3 games.
Terry, can I ask what you've made of the whole change in the last 14 months under Ange Postecoglou? Because it's fair to say that, you know, the rebuild has been absolutely huge. I think there is still a lot of work to do at the football club, but the amount of players that Ange Postecoglou has got out the door, the amount of new players that have come in the door, what have you made of the time of Ange so far at Tottenham?
I'm a 100% Ange believer. And I'm fully on the in Ange we trust bus here. I mean, just the general vibes that you get, that you can even feel it through. So I did get to go to a game at the end of Conte's reign. I haven't been to a game since, but you can even feel that. You can feel the connection with the crowd, with the fans. Even listening to fans now over here, you can feel a change here. The entertaining brand of football, the possession, the chances that are created. I mean, anybody has to admit that there's a positivity, there's an excitement that just wasn't there before. I know you didn't ask about it, but in terms of kind of backing the manager, I feel like we've really, really done a great job of doing that. If you look at especially the tremendous number of outgoings to really mold this in Ange's philosophy here. I think the 3 transfer windows thus far have been quite positive. I would rate them quite highly. I know there's still a few who are still kind of TBD in terms of how they're going to turn out. But they're clearly Ange type players, and they're clearly players who are going to fit this system well. I feel like it's just going to take a bit of time, a bit of coaching, and a bit of practice for it to all come together. These past 3 games kind of remind me of the first 10 games of Brighton under De Zerbi. I don't know if you guys remember that. When he first came into the league, they had a lot of possession. They were creating a lot of chances. The goals just weren't going in, but you could see that it was going to happen. And after 10 games, it really clicked, and they had an amazing second half of the season. Then I know it's not very scientific, but it kind of feels like that right now with me for Spurs and Postecoglou and these new teams and these new players.
Terry, what expectations do you have from this Spurs squad and Postecoglou this season?
So in terms of the league, I feel like a 5th or 6th is quite realistic. I feel like after the top 3. I feel like the top 3 are a pretty solid top 3, and there's so many good teams vying for that 4th spot. I mean, Chelsea looks really good. I think Newcastle has been a little bit off and on, but they still look good. Man United, I don't know, and Aston Villa because of Champions League, I'm not sure, but I think that's just a lot of places to vie for. Where I think we can really make a mark is honestly the Europa League. I am actually predicting that we're going to win the Europa League this year because I think a lot of those teams just won't be prepared for Ange ball. the intense pressing, the intense overloading, the inverted fullbacks, both inverted fullbacks. I feel like we caught a lot of teams off by surprise early last year, and then there was some adjustment to the team. I'm hoping that's what happens with the Europa League teams this year. So I would actually bet on the Europa League even more so than the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup for us. And I'm
Terry,
sure we'll take that, right?
Your first time on the channel and you're telling us the trophies are coming this season. Wow.
I think it's going to be the Europa League. Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that be great? Craig, should we get into this? Do you want to pull up the first image from the Newcastle game? Of course, the 2-1 away defeat. And we're going to talk to Gareth about the hybrid marking strategy that combines man marking and zonal marking to cover different areas and players. Actually, Craig, while you're doing that, Gareth, do you want to describe? We're going to go right from the very beginning. So if no one knows what we mean by man marking, zonal marking, hybrid marking, Gareth, do you want to give us a quick overview of the different types of marking and what Spurs are doing differently so far this season?
Yeah, go ahead. So some of the terms you'll probably hear over the course of the next hour and a half or so are man marking. So what is man marking? It's basically where you put pressure on individuals on a pitch and try to nullify them. So the best example I can probably think of in Premier League is remember when Jose Mourinho put Ander Herrera on Eden Hazard in a game and he literally followed him around the pitch. He nullified Hazard that day, and Man United beat Chelsea 2-0. It was the year that Spurs was competing with Chelsea in the 2016-17. That's probably the most aggressive man marking I've ever seen in a Premier League game, where it wasn't just from corners and set pieces. He literally followed him around the pitch wherever Hazard went. If Hazard went to the right, to the left, Herrera left his midfield spot and went to play right back, left back. So that's one example of man marking. Then you have the zonal marking, where you basically cover spaces, potential attacking spaces are covered by defenders. So you're not really focused on, you might get 3 or 4 players in the box from a corner, and you'll probably see it in some of the clips that Craig has, where 3 or 4 of Spurs' kind of tallest or strongest players will mark certain players, and the rest will cover zones that the Spurs defense have coaching set up believe where a ball might land. They'll try and cover that area, which obviously has been a big issue for Spurs because it hasn't been done well. Then from an attacking side, Ange Postecoglou's systems is all really about creating overloads. So that's, he just doesn't get Porro and Udogie to play as number 10s because he wants to change football. He's doing that for a reason, and we've seen that in the first goal of this season where Pedro Porro scores a header from the 12-yard penalty spot. So basically they try and create 2v1s. When we kick off from a goal kick, usually what happens is Romero and Van de Ven split. Bissouma will drop in and usually take the ball of his back to goal. Then if it's on the right side, Porro and Bissouma and Sarr will almost try and create an overload in that area. And once that overload and that line's broke, Porro then moves forward into that number 10 position, and Sarr often goes out towards where Kulusevski is again, trying to create that 2v1 overload. Madison at times as well drops to the left side, and if that happens, you'll see Son drift inside, and so on. So there's a method to every way Spurs try and play forward. One of our biggest threat or strengths at the moment, and we've seen it a number of times against Newcastle where he didn't take advantage of it, was their counter pressing ability. When Newcastle got the ball in that final third last Sunday, the amount of times Spurs won the ball back and had numbers pressing quickly. It wasn't just by luck that Spurs had players in them areas. That was by design. Madison a number of times won the ball back. So him and Son were the 2 highest pressing players. We've seen Son do it really well against Everton where he nicked the ball off Pickford. So there was also a case last year where Son went to nick it off the Forest goalkeeper at the City Ground and he just missed it. But the keeper panicked and kicked it straight to Kulusevski, who was the second man pressing at the time, and Kulusevski smashed the ball and then to make it 2-0 to Spurs. So there's numerous examples of Spurs attacking and defensively under Postecoglou that represent an identity and something that they're trying to do. The biggest difference was on Sunday is when they did counter press, they picked the wrong pass or the delivery was poor, or when the delivery was good, Chris, and we're going to look at this so many times tonight, there was nobody in that area to put the ball in the box. So that's just a number of terms that we're going to be using throughout the show. So zonal marking, man marking, overloading, and counter pressing are 4 big phrases that we use tonight. So hopefully that summed up well for anybody that wasn't too sure on it.
Thank you for that, Gareth. I just want to say as well, if you're listening to this on an audio platform, we are going to put a number of images and describe what we're seeing and what should have happened in the game. So we will try and do our very best to cater for the audio version, but it may be better on this occasion that you visit the YouTube version to watch it. Craig, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So on your screen, these are perhaps the bad points. There's a few things we're going to show you that are going to, they're not going to be ideal. But this is Newcastle's first goal from Sunday. Now, for me, all our defenders are in this line here. Not one of them is even looking at Harvey Barnes, who is the eventual goal scorer here. They're all going this way. Not one of them has picked him up. Now, Gareth might be able to come in and say, who do you think, Gareth, should be picking Harvey Barnes up?
Well, I think that area is where you want your number 6, sweeping anything, any danger. I think Roy Keane always says a lot in Sky as players that can sense danger. I'm not sure Bissouma is that type of player. I think Ange likes him because he's very good on the ball at times. Yes, he's a wee bit complacent at times. The ball slips under his foot, but I think that's more down to has complacency and a bit of arrogance more than his actual ability. He's very good at getting the ball from the back and starting the attacks in that phase. Bissouma's biggest weakness for me is he doesn't sense the danger. And in this situation, he's actually and along the back four with Dragusin probably doesn't need to go out there because Porro's there. So once Dragusin goes out, the left, it's like a tandem effect. They're all going to shift towards that side. So you can see Bissouma's going back, Udogie's come across, and Oderberg's actually going back there as well. But no one's actually read the danger on that side, on that box. And realistically, there's only two players this can go to. And there's sort of 2 or 3 players on that area behind the penalty spot that can kind of cover Isak, but no one's thought about a Harvey Barnes. And it is a great finish from Barnes, but it's so avoidable if one of our defenders, and in my opinion, it would be Bissouma, should be in that area to cut out that pass. We're all about cutting out lanes, and that's one of the things that Postecoglou does from the press. But the problem this time is the press has been beat. Newcastle's down the other end of the pitch, and it's about reacting. And I think we've seen it in a number of times. I think with all the 3 goals we've conceded this year, players are guilty of ball watching, and it's kind of something you try to eradicate at a youth level. And you wouldn't expect this off experienced players. So whilst you can be critical of Ange at times, I think a lot of this is down to you expect professional footballers, experienced players. I know some of them are young, but they've played football for a long time. They be aware of what's around them because there's only really 2 players now that can hurt Spurs, and everybody's focused on the crosser and the striker. No one's worried about the edge of the box, and that's where the ball goes. And by that time, there's no time to react, and it is a fantastic finish by Barnes, but it really is sloppy from a Spurs point of view.
It was sloppy.
This is Romero, by the way. Obviously, Chris, sorry to just pick up on that. And it was Romero that obviously went charging up the pitch. But just another point there.
I was going to say on that point, Craig, because of course Romero was out of position at that point, and of course it was a very quick throw-in. Great from a Newcastle point of view. They were very, very alert. Took the throw-in very quickly. The cross came in, and as you've said, Harvey Barnes should never be, with that much space in the Spurs penalty area. Comment here: 6v3. There's no way a man should be unmarked in that area. Completely agree. Terry, let's come to you. The lads have said there about a number 6. Were you surprised that Spurs did not go out and buy a number 6 in this transfer window? Are you disappointed with that?
A bit disappointed. The one I really liked, honestly, was Paulinho. It seemed like he had his heart set on Bayern Munich, and I don't know if we were ever seriously in conversations about going after him. I would have loved to have kind of our own version of a Rodri or a Declan Rice. It seems like Archie Gray it really could fit that role in the future here. And it seems, at least to me, I think Bissouma's been playing much better this year than last year. I mean, that's not a very high bar, but it seems like he is kind of a stopgap until we get one. I did have a question for you guys. I'm surprised more people don't talk about this. What do you guys think about Romero as our 6? I mean, he's got that defensive that. He knows he can sense the danger. He's very composed when he's on the ball and he can distribute. And that would allow us to have both Van de Ven and Dragusin on the back line. And that would really help us with our set pieces. I don't know if I'm being naive here, but I just don't know why that's not discussed more. What do you guys think?
We have spoken about that before, actually, Terry, a couple of times on the channel. But I think all of us agreed that Ange Postecoglou just won't do it. He sees Romero as a leader. He sees Romero as the perfect partner with Van de Ven, and I just can't see it happening. From a coaching point of view, Gareth, it does seem to make sense, but for me personally, I can't see it ever happening. But what do you think?
No, I don't think it will. I think Ange is very set in his ways. It's going to be a 4-3-3, although we don't play a 4-3-3 at times on possession, and we defend slightly different. It changes quite a lot. When we have the ball and depending on what area we're in, but the overall concept is a 4-3-3. Conte played that back 3, and I do think the modern day manager, I know Ange is older, but the way football's being played now, most teams do go with a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, and that seems to be the way of most successful teams. The kind of 3 at the back that Conte had success with Chelsea in the Premier League, and with a certain, he got us into the top 4 playing that way, and that sort of 7-8 months he was here in that first season. I know it went south in the second season, But I don't think that's the way forward for a lot of managers now. So I just don't think Ange will change that. I think he'll be looking at this goal and thinking we've got to do better. I mean, if you're looking at it, Porro, if he's not going to be able to if he can't win the ball back, Dragoson's not going to be able to affect the game there, because realistically, unless the ball hits him, he's not much use there. But it does happen so quickly. Bissouma's gone back in the area where he thinks he can cover Isak, and Udogie is making that run towards Isak, where if the ball beats Bissouma, he's in that covering position. You also have Vicario there. So they've all thought about the more immediate danger and not thought about the cutback. And it's surprising because Ange's system, a lot of his goals are crosses and cutbacks. So it's strange that this hasn't been picked up. But Romero badly out of position. And if you remember the goal last year, he scored in the Northampton Derby. He was the furthest forward player. So I'm not sure whether it can't be a coaching. There's no way Ange Postecoglou wants his centre back as his highest forward player or trotting back here in this position. And I do think Romero is a liability at times, and he's brilliant in his one-to-one duels. He's aggressive. He's brilliant at all that. But when it comes to reading the game and his concentration, I think multiple times he's let us down. And I think in these opening games, the Leicester goal was his fault, and he's badly out of position here. There's an argument that if Romero's in position, Bissouma would be where Barnes is. So maybe in being harsh on Bissouma, he thinks he has to cover that area. Because Dragoson, as we spoke about, the tandem effect, shifting across from the balls on the side of the pitch. Because Dragoson's coming across, and Romero's out of position, he probably thinks he has to be there as almost acting as the centre back. But it's really poor from Romero again to be so badly out of position, and you can either blame him or you can blame Bissouma. But
Gareth, can I ask, because the previous week, Van de Ven's charging up the pitch at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, setting up Heung-min Son perfectly. What a great assist. And after the game, Van de Ven said, the manager don't mind what we do. He trusts us on the pitch. Now, when Romero is rushing up the pitch there, and as you've just mentioned there, Bissouma is probably covering for him. So it seems that he's out of position. Harvey Barnes there on his own, finishes very, very well. Goal 1-0. Who's actually at fault there? Because if Ange Postecoglou is saying to the players, "I don't mind what you do," you can't have centre backs keep charging up the pitch. I know 1 week it works, but this certainly didn't.
Well, that's one of the principles of defence, Chris, that we'll probably speak about is cover. And I think if a Van de Ven is bombing forward with the ball, somebody has to realise that if we lose this ball, we're going to be out of position here. We need someone to cover that void. With a Van de Ven, maybe it's different because it was Van de Ven, but it was only really Son could keep up with him. So it was irrelevant in the end because the ball's on the back of the net. But if Van de Ven had lost that and we had 9 other players forward and Everton go up the other end and score, it's punished. This one, I've just seen a lot of this from Romero, this kind of wandering forward, Chris. It's not really doing any effect. The goal against Arsenal last year was down to a Raya pass. If Raya kicked it straight to him, if Raya launches that ball forward, we're a centre back short. So I really think Romero lacks discipline in so many areas of his game. He's prone to a red card with a bad tackle. Sometimes he gets himself booked when he doesn't need to get booked. Don't get me wrong, I love his aggression at times, and there is a top player on him, but I think he's really let us down on a couple of goals this year. And you only have to ask Ange where the blame lies here. If Romero's in position, where does Bissouma be? It's all ifs and buts. But that's the only reason I can see Bissouma being back on there is because where Romero is out of position. Dragoson's come across. They held Porro. Then Bissouma's acted as the left centre back where Romero was playing on Sunday because Van de Ven wasn't playing. Udogie's come inside to cover Isak, as we says. Odebear's tracked all the way back as well. But when you've got, as somebody pointed out on the chat there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Spurs players inside the box plus Porro out challenging the cross, plus Vicario in goal. Like, we've got 7 players back against Newcastle's 3, and we've still managed to concede. And somebody says, look, it could happen, 9 times out of 10 if that ball comes on the Barnes, he probably doesn't score it because it was a really difficult finish. But when it goes in, that's the problem. And too many times we've got too many players ball watching, Chris, and I'm sure we'll see the Leicester club that Craig has, but it was the same story there where Romero's wandering and he's not watching the ball, he's not watching the players, he's watching the ball.
Before we move on, I just wanted to point out that Romero has had the most touches out of any Spurs player so far this season, 284. Passing accuracy, 91.5%, just behind Van de Ven, 93.4%. Recoveries, Van der Ven 12, Romero 18, and duels won 64.5% for Romero, aerial duels won 56.2% to Van der Ven's 36.4 and 28.6% respectively. Craig, do you want to move on?
Yep. And obviously that's the aftermath of the goal. Great, as somebody said, great finish by Harvey Barnes, and you know the angle that came to him, the height. It was a superb finish, but in my opinion, it was definitely preventable. Okay, so this is the Johnson goal. Now looking at this angle, it looks like he's just got to tap in, but of course things move a lot quicker in real life. What I find amazing about this clip, this guy here is Christian Romero. This is obviously Heung-min Son. Now, what you could say, the centre forward should have been in that position to receive across from Johnson if he wanted to, but you've got to remember this is a rebound from a shot, so we'll probably let him off that one. But again, why is Romero up there? I mean, you love to see all players attack him, but perhaps, Gareth, you want to take this, because it's just bizarre, isn't it?
Well, as I was saying, the two things that are bizarre about this club is we've only got 3 players in the box, and one of them's our centre back. Where's Odebear? Where's Kulizeski? Where's Madison? I know Madison had the shot. Where's the supporting players? They were nowhere to be seen. And let's be honest, this was a difficult chance because of the way it was bouncing for Johnson. He got a decent contact on it, and Newcastle under that much pressure at this stage. Dan Burns just sort of panics and kicks it on his own net. But we had them under so much pressure at this stage. But again, we're seeing that sort of almost like a free roll from Romero. I don't think this is being practiced. When Van der Ven comes forward, Chris, I know you spoke about it. There's a method that when he's coming forward, he's driving with the ball forward. Romero's kind of just casually walking there. I think the one we spoke about, the Arsenal goal last year, he just kind of wanders there. And Raya kicks at them, and it's a great finish. But I don't see any method that Romero's attacking. He's brilliant in the air. I think he scored the most goals from defenders last year, most of them headers, and he scored one again this year. But he doesn't really need to be up there because, there is attacking players in that area. And Romero's more likely to cost us than sort of do anything for us useful in that area, because if we lose the ball and we're centre back short, then that means Basuma's having to cover again, and you probably got that gaping hole around the danger zone or that sort of edge of the D where Newcastle got that first goal. And that is an area would be quite exposed on, Chris, at times, as that gap between the defence and the midfield, especially in the transition. I think at times we're really wide open. And I just don't think Ange would be encouraging that kind of naivety and that kind of lack of discipline, because that's what it looks like from Romero at times, because he's not focused when he's defending and wandering forward. I just think he's like a bit of a rabbit in the headlights, and maybe he's thinking because he's scoring all these goals he can score more. But your primary objective as a defender is to stop goals going in, and if you can pick goals up from set pieces, great. But you really don't need to be in the box when your midfielder's hitting a shot from 20 yards away.
Terry, let's bring you in here. When Craig's shown this image, you would expect a lot more Spurs players in the box, as Gareth said. And of course, you'd be expecting, the player playing centre forward, Heung-min Son, at this point, to be busting the gut to get in there to have a simple tap-in. This has happened so many times, not just in the 3 games this season, but in many, many games last season. What have you made of Spurs in the final third? Because even Ange Postecoglou himself, during the whole time he's been at the football club, has been very critical and has always said there is so much more growth to come in the final third.
Yeah, I think frustrating is the word, right? Because I think clearly what Ange wants are those crosses coming across the face of goal, and that's happening. Like Brennan Johnson's making that happen. Even Timo Werner was making that happen. There just isn't. There's constantly just no one on the end of that ball. It happened at the end of that Newcastle game, where Son should have been crashing forward, and he just kind of steps back. And I don't know why he was so mad at Brennan Johnson for not passing it back to him. He could have been there. That should have been a goal right there. So it's just frustrating. But I think our answer is there. And his name's Dominic Solanke. I cannot wait. I really, really, really hope he's back for Sunday's game. But he naturally does that in Richarlison, even does that a little bit more than any of the other strikers do. So it's been frustrating thus far, but at least we're getting to that point. We're at least we're getting to that point where we are creating those chances, and all we need to do is just finish off that last 5% there. I have to say, Craig, I was pretty shocked to see this image. I even during replays, I didn't realize it was just that was Romero all the way up there. That's pretty alarming to see right now. Gareth, to your point about you don't think Postecoglou is encouraging him to run up that far. I don't think so, but I don't think he's discouraging him either, because it keeps happening again and again and again. I mean, he seems to really have all the latitude he wants to get up as far up at the field that he wants to. I don't think he's getting dinged by Postecoglou for being there.
I think there's a big decision to be made this Sunday about the centre back pairing, because on the evidence, I thought Dragusin was our best defender on Sunday, and Van de Ven has to play. So it would take a big, Romero's one of the leadership team. He's the vice captain with Madison. If Son's not the cap, so I would be surprised if he did. But I even thought with Dragusin, his positioning was good. It was that one time he was chasing after Isak and he matched him for piss and he made that great tackle. So, with Arsenal's, if Martinelli and Saka's playing, and we know Porro and Udogi's going to be caught out at some stage because of the way Ange wants them to play. Fujiwara, Dragusin, and Van de Ven partnership at the back, there's an argument that might be better, and it'll be interesting to see. I'll be surprised, because I think Romero's one of his main men, but I do think there's a case they try that this weekend.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that at all, to be honest. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Okay, right, we'll just move on. This is, again, the second goal from Newcastle. Now, we spoke about this before. You could argue, this is Dragusin here. Now, you could argue that these three are in line, right? I know that's not exact, but it's near or nearabouts. And Murphy, which is here, apologies to everybody on audio, but it's better on YouTube watching this. He would be offside if Dragusin was in line with the other four. Or is it Christian Romero, who is facing this way and has switched off? Because this ball, as we know, is going to go in here. So, Gareth, who's at fault there? Is it Romero for not being in the wrong position, in his body position all wrong? Or is it Dragusin, who's not in line with the other three defenders? Right,
so the principles of defence that we'll speak about here are pressure on the ball. There's none of it. No pressure on the ball for Joelinton. They play that pass through to Murphy. Compactness, there's none. There's gaps everywhere. So we've no compactness. We've got no pressure on the ball. We've got nobody to delay. Nobody can even give away a free kick. There's nobody close to Joelinton. And if you don't have any of that, you don't have balance. And when you don't have balance, you have panic. And what has happened here Dragusin has panicked, because I think he's looking at it thinking there's no pressure on the ball. That ball is going to go through. I need to be in line. We all kind of had a feeling when Murphy was going through, and I think Dragusin's read this, that he's going to try and square the Isak for it to happen, and that's exactly what happened. So he's trying to get himself into a position where he thinks he can match Isak. Problem that Dragusin's got is he's watching the ball, like we've spoke about so often. So many players watching the ball. He's not looking at Romero or the defender on the far side, Doggy. They stay in line, because he can probably has a fair idea that Porro is the furthest forward, and he wouldn't be able to see Porro from his head position anyway, but he probably has an idea that Porro is quite far forward, so therefore is playing the offside. But Romero is watching the ball, and he's actually walking out. He's not even trying to get out in time. So Dragusin and Romero, between them, are at fault for this, because Dragusin's step back and gambling on where he can be to affect the game. But if he steps up, we'll probably catch them offside. But this is all happening in split seconds, split second moments. You don't really have, he just has to go with what he thinks. But Romero, for me, is he doesn't even know where Murphy is, I don't think. I think Dragusin's already reading the fact that he has to be in a position to stop the cutback for Isak. But the ball's that good, and Isak's already gone. The Dragusin just can't get back, and that's exactly what happens. He cuts it across, and it's a goal. But between Dragusin and Romero, the two of these are at fault here. I would blame Romero more, to be honest, because I think he's just walking out. He's not trying to get out quickly. and he doesn't even know where Murphy is, and the ball comes down his side. Dragusin, you can point to be at fault because of the offside traps going wrong, but it's a combination, boys, of all those things I spoke about before. No pressure on the ball, no compactness, nobody to delay, and that means there's no balance. And when there's no balance, you're in big trouble and defensively on a football pitch. And I knew as soon as I seen this ball breaking the jointing, we were in huge trouble. But credit to jointing, the ball's perfect, and Murphy squares the sack and they walk it in. And this was at a time when Spurs was absolutely dominant in the football match, and it was all too easy again.
Craig, can I ask you, is this image bothering you? Because we've seen high lines like this under Ange Postecoglou for 14 months or so. Is this still bothering you? Because even after the game, Ange said, well, the game should have been put to bed way before this. Is our defensive side of the game still really bothering you as a fan?
You can see little improvements. For me, you can. But I agree what King Hoddle said in the chat there. If Van der Ven's there, this goal ain't happening because he would have caught Murphy up. And Van der Ven is so important to this system and how we play that high line. When he's not playing, I'd just like to see us drop a few yards, 5 yards, because Dragusin isn't slow, Romero isn't slow, Porro isn't slow, the doggy isn't slow, but none of them are Van der Ven. Van der Ven would have caught him up 100%, and that goal would not have happened. But when Van der Ven is not in this team, it worries me when it's that high. But Ange sees it, we're going to score one more than you, which is great. If we score one more than you,
Craig, I think what you said is right. See that drop in 5 yards? I think that's what Dragusin's tried to do, because when you're taught from a young age as a player, as a youth player, when there's no pressure on the ball, drop, because you're going to be crucified if you don't, because you've got all that space on behind, and if you don't drop, you're in ball. And I think that's what Dragusin's tried to do, but Romero has gone completely the other way. Whereas if Romero drops to where Dragusin is, the goal's a bit more preventable because he's in a better position. But once this ball goes past Romero, he's completely out of the game. Udogie and Porro, I think, are always going to be exposed when they're asked to play the way they are. So I think if you blame anybody for their position, then that's just Ange. You can only blame Ange because of how they're expected to play. But I think Dragusin and Romero have just acted completely different here. There's no communication. One has decided to drop like you recommended, and the other one has tried to play offside. And the biggest issue here is there's no pressure on the ball. If there's pressure on the ball, that pass doesn't happen. So it's a domino effect from getting that first principle of defense wrong. Once you get the first wrong, the second, the third, and the fourth, as it says already, once you don't have balance, you're in big trouble.
I think as well, obviously, sorry, Chris, there's a winger here that Udogie's going to have his eye on. But that pass Joey Linton's made, for me, it's a cracking pass, but you can see it. He lifts his head and you can see it, can't you? It's not like there's 3 or 4 players in front. As you said, Gareth, that midfield is wide open.
I was going to ask Terry, you've said about Van der Ven. If Van der Ven was in the starting 11 there, Craig, then of course that goal wouldn't happen. And we said earlier, if Dominic Solanke was in there, you can't keep relying on players, because we've got, Ange Postecoglou's got to change the personnel, the starting 11 for Carabao Cup games, Europa League games. You can't keep relying on 1 or 2 players. You're either going to play the system or you're not. Terry, what do you make of that? Because the reason why I've said that is because it's been said on this podcast already this evening, and I've seen those comments so often since that Newcastle game.
I 100% agree with that. Ultimately, I think that's what Ange is trying to strive towards. Because you look at a Man City, they lose De Bruyne for months at a time. They don't change the way they play. They're fine. Holland doesn't score for a few games. They're fine. They find other ways to score. Same thing with Liverpool. Salah doesn't score for a while. They find other ways to score. Arsenal loses Gabriel Jesus. That's no problem. It's people fit into the systems. The backups fill into the systems. It's more of a squad. We can't be too over-reliant on Van de Ven. We can't be too over-reliant on Udogie. Everyone has to fit into the pieces more seamlessly. And I think it's a work in progress. I feel like we're getting there. I mean, there's a lot of combinations that just haven't played together. So I think this pairing of Romero and Dragoshin last week was that was pretty last minute. It's that Van de Ven news kind of came out of nowhere. But I felt like Dragoshin overall adjusted to that really well. I'm with Gareth in that I feel like if anyone didn't really adjust to it really well, it was probably Romero out of the two. But I really feel like that we need more experience from some more of the squad players to be able to fit in, whether they're asked to fit in at left back, at left center back, in the midfield, understand the system as a whole. And it's a work in progress to get there, but I feel like we are getting there.
It does feel a bit like that though, Craig, doesn't it? Like Van de Ven to the rescue all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why he's so important to this system. And you can't say anything more than that, unless we get another centre-back with lightning pace like akin to Van de Ven, then for me, I would just like to see him drop a few yards. I'm not talking about go back to Conte and Mourinho ball, but when I played to a decent enough standard, and we knew when I was a striker, but our defence, when we knew he was up against, or they were up against a fast striker, what you're told to do, like Gareth says, you drop off a little bit. You drop off a little bit and just give yourself that extra bit of time. So I'd just like to see us. I love the Cavalier style because I prefer it to what we've been watching the last 4 years, but it's such extremes. I just think in that situation we should be a little bit deeper. That's all.
Yeah.
On this particular play here, I know we were talking about Udogie before. I was actually surprised Udogie didn't catch up with Jacob Murphy because he was one of our fastest players last year. He seems to still be getting a bit up to speed. I don't see the 100% speed from him that we saw from him last year. So I feel like hopefully in a few weeks after he's fully up to speed, in a similar situation, if Van de Ven wasn't there, Udogie would be able to catch him.
Well, you can see from the next slot, this is the only extra one I've got on this because we don't need to see the goal because we know what happens. But obviously, Udogie is kind of matching for pace there. Romero is turned, but he's never getting back. And obviously, Isak here is very fast player. So
and I think the issue is here, Craig, as well. Once Dragoshin knows Romero's not going to get back, he's forced to go to the player that's causing the most immediate danger, and that's Murphy. And it leaves that space for Isak. Whereas we've seen it a few years ago in a Liverpool Spurs game where Van Dijk let Sissoko have the shot and he covered Son the whole way. I wonder in this situation with Dragoshin, if it happened again, because we know how dangerous Isak is, would he just let Murphy run through and hope Fikayo will save it? Does he completely block off that pass? Because once he commits, we're in big, big trouble because Porro's not going to get back. But Dragoshin's probably doing what his instincts tell him to do, and that is he centre-backs out of the game, go to the player that's causing the most immediate danger. And by that stage, I knew right away it was going to happen. I knew Murphy was going to score at the Isak. It was just so frustrating. From Joelinton's pass going through, I could nearly have commentated the goal. I knew it was going to happen. But we just couldn't react in time, and ultimately it's cost us a game. But like Chris says, I do agree with Irons that we really should have been out of sight, but that you can't rely on that every week. You need to make sure we're dealing with these situations better. And there is going to be weeks Van de Ven's not available, and if he's having to run back every week, he's going to at a hamstring. It's going to be very, very close to going at some stage because you're doing that much exerting that much force in your sprints. There's always that risk it could go, and if we lose him again I'm convinced that's why he didn't play, because apparently he trained all week, but he just wasn't 100%. And I think Irons was so fearful of losing him for a sustained period. He just said, look, we go what we have against Newcastle. And really, it should have been enough based on the chances we created. But because we've been profligate and we've given away 2 sloppy goals, we've lost the game.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to the next one, Craig?
Yeah, next slide, please. Right, just for balance, for Brennan Johnson, I'm talking about. Now, Brennan Johnson has had a lot of stick, but I think he came on and did exceptionally well against Newcastle. Now, this is Brennan Johnson here, as you can see. He's done exactly what he's been told. He's put the ball into an area, and it was a great low cross, and it went between the keeper and defenders. Why is nobody in here? Why is Son there for the pullback? Son, in my opinion, should be in here. Yes, I know they like pulling balls back, but realistically, Johnson is not going to pull that back. So, but obviously, this is zoomed in a little bit. I'm not sure who was behind Son. Am I being harsh there, Gareth? That's a cracking ball, isn't it?
That's the only place Johnson can put the ball, because there's 3 players blocking that route that Son has. Johnson cannot get that ball back to Son, and if Son makes that movement to where you put the arrow there, it frees up space where Son is, because them defenders are then going back. He drags them defenders back with him. That there is an opportunity for somebody to arrive on that area to score. So it would, again, there's a number of issues here. Son's movements poor, and ideally you would like your left side. I think it might have been Werner at the time. It's so late in the game. He should be in the back post, and there should be players like a Bergvall, who was on at the stage, arriving in that sort of penalty spot area as an extra option. But again, we've only got 2 players in the box, and I think when people were critical of the transfer window, about signing so many young players, this is the pain you have to go through. The experience just isn't there. You expect it from Son, but an Odebear, a Bergvall. I even think players that we already have, like Kulusevski, Madison, I don't think they've got that killer instinct, Chris and panel. I really don't think we're blessed with players that have that killer instinct. Johnson gets a lot of criticism, but he does score from front post areas and back. He does make them runs. I don't see anyone else making them runs. I know Johnson's numbers aren't great, but he still scored 5 goals last year. And if you look at the 4 of them are very similar. Other than the Villa goal, he gets across the front post for 2 and gets across the back post for the other 2. So they're arriving in an area. And I don't know, other than Son and Johnson, Kulusevski doesn't really do that. Odebear, from what I've seen, he was standing on his toes a few times. Alan Smith was in commentary. He was saying Odebear's got to be getting across that back post for a tap-in. Werner doesn't do it, and when he does, he's capable of missing it as well. We haven't really got that killer instinct, and I think Solanke, particularly Solanke, but also even a Richarlison, would have made such a big difference in a game like this. Because if you remember last year, Chris, in that period between sort of December and mid-January, Johnson and Richarlison were linking up really well with a lot of goals.
This is literally the last minute of the game. We could have salvaged a draw here, got a point away from home, a difficult place to go. But as you guys have already said, every single player should be busting the gut to get in there. And Brennan Johnson has received so much criticism, particularly after this game. But I agree with what Craig said. He has done his job. He is told to, put the ball in, cross, round the 6-yard box. I don't think Brennan Johnson could have done any more there. And when you show this image on screen like this, the position where Son is there's no way that Brennan Johnson is getting through those 3 players in the Newcastle box to pull that ball back to Heung-min Son. And I think that Sonny should be busting the gut to get in there for the tap-in, if not another player, because that is quite a wide shot there. Where are the other Spurs players going in to attack that ball? They're not. But as I say, I think that Brennan Johnson's certainly done his job. Terry, let's come to you on Brennan Johnson, because he has received a lot of criticism lately. But when you look at this, last minute of the game, he was an impact sub. He come on at half-time. I thought he had a good 45 minutes. What have you made of Brennan Johnson in the Spurs shirt? And do you think that we will see vast improvements under Postecoglou?
Yeah, I think I think the criticism's been unfair, to be honest. It's clear that he seems to do better off of the bench. I felt like he had a really big impact in the second half versus Newcastle when he came on. I feel like the team came alive more, and I agree that he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do here, and he did that time and time and again here. I feel like some of the criticisms comes to due to some of his misses, but I mean, everybody's going to make some goals. Everybody's going to miss. This is not his fault here. Son needs to be there. Whoever was on the left wing needs to be there. Heck, in this picture, I kind of wish Romero was back in the picture here. It's even that would have been nice.
Yeah, where's Romero?
Yeah,
realistically, right? If you're the defenders here, you're thinking this is great because Son's static, not moving. Therefore, Newcastle don't really have to do anything. Whereas if Son even makes that run to the front post or the back post, then the Newcastle defenders in front of him have to react, and they then go back into that space, and it frees up that whole 10 yards between the D and the penalty spot for somebody arriving. Then there's another option, because once you make a movement defenders have to react everywhere. So it then allows attackers to move on the space, and that's the one thing that is really shocking about this club, because Son is he's very good at getting on the areas and scoring goals. He scored over 120 Premier League goals, I believe. So he's an experienced superstar who scores every type of goal. So whether it's down to fatigue or just generally switching off, but I mean, as the panel says, Johnson's done all he can there. And again, it was another opportunity that went wasted on Sunday.
Right. I mean, Chris, to your question about what I think about Brennan Johnson and his future, I feel like he just needs to have a consistent connection with some of the other strikers out there. Like Gareth mentioned last year, when he and Richarlison were consistently playing together, they had a streak of about 5 or 6 games where they were consistently connecting. It was fantastic to see. I don't think it's a Johnson issue as much as it is just a cohesive front three issue, and the three of them learning to play together. The thing I would like to see from Johnson just is a bit more consistency. There's games where he seems to completely disappear, and it's 60, 70 minutes in, you're like, is Brennan Johnson even playing this game? And then there's other games where it feels like he's the most dynamic player on the field. So would just like to see. I don't know what that comes down to. But I would just love to see some more consistency from him.
Next one, Craig.
Okay, I'm just going to show a few now, just to lighten the mood a bit. This is a few clips of Ange Ball at his best. This goal here, Kulusevski over here, driven the ball across, and obviously this is one where it is pulled back, slightly different situation, and Son's run on and scored. Again, jump in, Gareth, whenever you want. Obviously this against Palace.
I was going to say, the thing you can see the difference already is the numbers in the box. You've got balance. You've got players on the left, players on the right, players centrally. You've got players outside the box when they pick up the pieces. You've got someone in the left, someone in the right, two in the centre. So again, you've got options, and as you can see, those defenders, the 3 defenders, don't know where they react to, where they go to. This player on the closest to Kulusevski's obviously tried to stop a cross. Then the centre back closest to Bentancur is thinking about Bentancur, therefore it leaves that space for Son. The defender on the right hand side is occupied by Werner, and all those 3 things lead to Son being free and therefore scoring. So again, the biggest difference you can see here is the overload of numbers. And when you have more players on around the box, you can affect the game. You don't need to touch the ball to affect the game. Just your actual positioning in and around the penalty area creates problems for defenders, and that is why Son almost more or less gets a free shot here, and he finishes it brilliantly. And as you'll see on next clip, Craig, again, there's so many players on the round, and then Crystal Palace players aren't sure which players to pick up or where the immediate danger is.
Yeah, if I was this fella's manager, I'd be saying, why are you marking Timo Werner? But then I'm joking. Right, yeah, absolutely, Gav. Look, there is actually 7 Palace players. There may be one out shot over here. But we've got 3 players in the box here. Porro's just outside. I think that's Emerson Royale over there. That may be Werner over here.
Madison, Frank.
Is that Madison? Yeah, so overload again. Again here. Ball pulled back again. This is Sonny, but numbers in the box. Actually, players ahead of him. Again here, low cross across the front, tapping essentially.
Yeah, and see that one, Craig, where Johnson made that dash there to the near post to score. That was something that Odegaard didn't do on Sunday against Newcastle. Johnson actually started this game on the left. So he's coming in from the left-hand side here because Kulusevski played on the right in this game. So Johnson's made that run across the defence and got into an area where he can affect the game. That was something that Odegaard didn't do on Sunday. Some really nice things from Odegaard in the game, but when the ball was on the opposite side of the pitch, he never once got across his man at that front post or the back post. They be effective and realistically, he can look nice with tricks. He beat a few players at times, but when it came to end product, he only scored 2 goals last year for Burnley, and you can see why, because he's not that type of killer instinct player. I do think Johnson's best on the right, but he showed at times last year on the left he can be effective when he makes this run across the front post.
Yeah. And again, great cross from Sonny. Johnson coming in at the far post for a tap-in. that was a very quick a break from what I remember in that game.
Yeah, last minute of the game, counter-attack. And again, Johnson on the right area, arriving at the back post. And look, what you can see from all these clubs is Brennan Johnson's heavily involved in a lot of them. So, for me, he's got to be a player that's on the pitch. Yes, he's frustrating at times. Yes, he can do better. But I think he's a big part of the Ange's plans. And I do think he's the type of player with a bit more training and a bit more experience. He could be a real top player for us.
Hey, Gareth, you've mentioned over there a couple of times now. I think we just have to keep in mind that he's only had 2 games with us. He's been with us for just a few weeks. I'd be surprised if he had, 10, 15 practices in him. I feel like there's enough glimpses there that I feel like that killer instinct, kind of knowing where to be, I feel like that could come in the next few weeks here.
Yeah. Craig, this is one of the examples we spoke about at the start, overloading. So this is something we see quite a lot with Ange's team. Sarr on that right-hand side and Madison sometimes on the left. So in this instance, Sarr's bombed down the right. Kulusevski's then went inside, as you can see there, just beside Dingley in the number 12 spot. You can see Kulusevski. And Madison is making that third man run under the box, breaking the lines, and he gets on the end to score this goal. So again, this is another really well-worked goal where Spurs, kind of players where you wouldn't expect them to be. You'd expect Kulusevski to be where Sarr is. You'd probably expect Sarr to be where Kulusevski is. You'd probably expect Son in the middle there, but it's actually Madison. So again, it shows you the flexibility that Ange plays with, that certain players end up in different positions in attacking areas. And this was a perfect example of it. We've seen Sarr on the right setting up Madison, the number 10, for a goal.
Cracking cross as well, I have to say that was. And this one as well, obviously just a tap in here. But again, Gareth, numbers in the box.
Yeah.
And
again, you're seeing your left backs scoring the goal. So again, we talked about the left backs and the right backs coming in to play as number 10s. And I think obviously Doggy's been injured at times, but we've seen Porro recently score a lot of goals towards the back end of last season and this season. So, for all the criticism of the system, Porro is now starting to hit numbers. He's already on the score sheet this season. And I know sometimes he does probably take too many shots from outside the box. I think he's had more shots than any other Spurs player this season. But he is getting in the right areas, and he is quite a good striker of a football. So for all the flaws that we've seen defensively, there is so many attacking options there. And again, Craig, as you says, the biggest difference from last season to this season, all these clubs you're seeing is the numbers in the box. And when you have numbers in the box, it causes serious problems for defenders.
Just to put things into perspective in terms of shots, Pedro Porro's had 8. Kulusevski has only had 2. Even Dominic Solanke's had 3, and he's only played 1 game.
Yeah.
Wow, that is surprising. Obviously, against Liverpool, Richarlison crossed to Son. Now, these are defensive frailties, and I'm sure all of us are going to want to have a say on this. So, before I run it on, obviously, this is the Leicester game. We have Christian Romero here. And we got Jamie Vardy. Now, everybody knows about this or should know, but I think it's really good to go through it again. Jamie Vardy is looking directly at Romero. He's watching where he goes. And remember, Romero is just going to run past him and go in here. Gareth, talk us through this. This is poor defended, isn't it?
Yeah, well, just before we do talk about what happens, just looking at it now, I don't think we're in too bad of a position because we've got cover on the edge of the box. We can see Udogie's going to go out and press. I think it might be Mavididi on the ball for Leicester at this particular time. And if he plays that ball inside, Van de Ven can get across there and cover. So the only real danger is the 2 players inside the box. And Sarr is covering Decador-Reid and Romero is marking Vardy. But as you see, Craig, when we forward it on, the biggest issue that we have here, and I don't think this is down to tactics or anything, it's down to one player completely switching off and ball watching. And at this stage, Porro is not going to get back goal side of Vardy. So, I mean, if Romero just stays goal side of Vardy, this goal is avoidable and Spurs probably won the game 1-0. Even with all them missed chances, they probably go on and win the game 1-0. So, whilst there was more holes in the Newcastle goals, I do think this was down to more of an individual error than any flaw in the system. Because Romero has left all that space for Vardy, because if you go back, that space wasn't there. Then Porro sensed the danger once Romero's went inside, but he's too late to get back, and the goal goes into the net. So I would put that goal solely down to Romero and not on any other player or coaching setup. I don't know how you feel, but I do feel that's just him switching off completely.
Gareth, if this can happen against a team like Leicester, and no disrespect to Leicester, they've just come up from the Championship, but you know, a lot of people have tipped them to go straight back down again. If this can happen at the start of the season when you're meant to be extremely sharp from pre-season, are you worried about games such as Arsenal on Sunday? Because of course we know how strong they can be going forward.
Well, Craig or Chris, I think that's the biggest worry, because if you remember the Arsenal game last year, we were 3-0 down at half time and we were arguably the better team. We had the more chances. We played the better front foot football. And I can see it going I don't think Arsenal's going to come at us. I think they're going to wait for us to make mistakes, because there's enough evidence over the last season and about now, 3 games on this, that we're capable of making those mistakes. You know, he'll back on Spurs maybe not being clinical, and there are going to be gaps at some stage, and Arsenal have so much more quality than the 3 teams we've played that they will cut us open. And if you remember the second goal for Saka, we were completely cut open. Now I know it was Ben Davis against Saka, and you know that won't happen this weekend, but you just completely went from front to back, and in the space of 2 or 3 passes, we were cut open. So that is the worry. That if we do lack concentration, and I know Craig, I don't want to spoil the show because I know Craig has some Arsenal clips from last year, but you're going to see where we lost that game last year. Arsenal didn't win it. We threw that game away ourselves between not being clinical and switching off defensively. So, you know, if it happens again this weekend, Chris, forget about it. We're going to get beat, but we got to start. Romero surely has got to be looking at these performances the last few weeks and thinking, I've cost the team on at least one occasion that we can see here. And he's arguably at fault for a couple of the goals against Newcastle too. So, but just on this goal, Chris, I would strongly say that I do think this is down to more of an individual error than any coaching setup compared to the Newcastle goals.
Terry, can I bring you in here? Because when we go from such defensive football from the likes of Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, and now you're almost getting the attitude from Ange Postecoglou, and even Vicario has come out and said it before as well, that we don't care about clean sheets. It's about how many goals we score up the other end. When we are missing so many chances and have been so wasteful in so many games, particularly this season in the 2 away games that we've played so far, including this Leicester one that we're talking about, defence then really matters. So it's not a case of don't worry, we'll score more than you, because if we can't finish up one end, surely we've got to worry more about the other end.
Yeah. I do think they care. I do think I don't actually believe Vicario when he says we don't care about clean sheets, because if you see his reaction to Bergvall after he gave away the ball, you could see that he does care. I think the beauty and the problem with Ange's system is that it all needs to work in conjunction with one another. The pressing, the high line, the overloads, and they need to catch people off guard. I'm with Gareth on this one. This particular one, I think, is more an issue of just individual just shutting off. Romero really should have been there. Again, I know it's not everything, but I'm going to kind of harken back to the XG. Our XG against is actually the second lowest in the league after Man City this year. So I feel like we are doing the right things there. I do think there is a focus on the defense. I'm glad to see there seems to be a little bit more solidity on the set piece defending as well. I think a lot of that is going to come out on Sunday against Arsenal. I'm really curious to see, not just in the build-up, but on set pieces, how we match up against them versus last year, because it was pretty brutal to watch last year.
Yeah. Back to you, Craig.
Yeah, not much else I can say on that, to be honest with you. I think we've covered that one. It's just Romero switching off. Okay, this is Liverpool last year now. This is Mohamed Salah. He's the eventual scorer of this goal. Now, the cross is coming in.
Again, Craig,
talk us through this.
Again, right? The body position is really important defensively. Emerson Royale's body position is in totally the wrong position. He should be turned possibly 90 degrees the other way, almost like straight, where he can kind of react. Yes, he has to keep an eye on the ball. He can't stand when he's backed it, but the position he's in now, he cannot react to that ball going on behind him, to Salah, because he's totally the opposite way. He should be almost facing the halfway line, if you understand, where he's in a position where he can react to the ball going over him and deal with that. But what he actually does, he doesn't even react at all. He just stands there and watches, and the ball goes on behind him, and Salah scores. So not just Emerson Royal. Again, I think a lot of players here are all watching the ball. The only player I can see that's in a half decent body position in that back four is Van de Ven. You can kind of see the way his legs are planted. He is ready to react, but the other ones are all kind of just ball watching. Romero's possibly getting himself in line in case there's a shot comes on. You can see him kind of going out for a block, but the ball goes to the back post, and Emerson Royal's body position is in totally it's a coach's nightmare here, because if you're watching this and if that ball goes on behind you, he cannot react to that because of where his body position is.
Is that because he's a right back, Gareth? And obviously, I've heard Gary Neville talk about your body positions.
Yeah, possibly because he's fist inside, isn't he? Because he's sort of stronger side. So possibly because he's not in that position that often. But basically, I mean, you leave a player like Salah, he's arguably the most deadly finisher from the right side of a pitch in football on that left foot. He's shown it last weekend against Man United what he can do. And he's just not ready to react it. It's almost like he doesn't think Salah's there. But it's just a defender's, it's a manager's nightmare when he sees that. And if that ball goes on behind him, which it does, Salah or Emerson Royal actually is. I think Emerson Royal, when the goal goes on, he's still standing there. I don't think he reacts at all. But even if he did try to react, it wouldn't have done much difference because his body position doesn't allow him to react to what happens.
Gareth, do you think tactically we're a better team this season, or do you think that it's too early to say at the moment? Only 3 games in, and when you think about the opponents that we've had so far, I don't think Newcastle were fully on it when they beat us. I think they were there for the taking. Everton, a very poor Everton. They made a number of mistakes, and of course Leicester have just come up from the Championship. Would you agree with that? Is that a fair assessment? Is this the real test on Sunday in terms of what tactics we will see under Postecoglou?
Yeah, it is too early to say because there's only 3 games in. And as you say, the opposition hasn't been great. I mean, I think we're disappointed, but the players and the coaching staff will be kicking themselves that they haven't got 9 points because they really should have. Basic errors and lack of profligacy in front of goal has been the reason we haven't got 9 points. I think Terry made some good points. Other than the Vardy chance after the Leicester goal, I don't think Vicario had another save to make in that game. The Everton game, I can't really remember him making a save. There was a series of corners before half-time, 3 or 4 extremely ropey. We looked extremely ropey from them corners just before the half-time whistle in the Everton game, and that tells me that we're not fully confident there yet. And what I've noticed, Chris, is Vicario isn't coming off his line at all this year. Whether that's a personal decision or a coaching decision, he is staying rooted to his goal line. He's not coming to collect or punch or anything like that. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes on Sunday, because Arsenal last year were the best set piece team in the league. And we were one of the worst, if not the worst. So that's going to be put to serious test this weekend. And just like I said, they finish off there, the Newcastle game as well. Other than their 2 goals, I think there was another chance, a 2-1 on the counter-attack where Vicario saved at the near post. The only other chance I remember Newcastle having was like a kind of bit of a fluky one where Isak tried to chip it in towards the back post and hit the crossbar. Other than that, we haven't really been cut open that much in these 3 games, but I think it's going to be put to the test this Sunday, as you say, Chris. And we're going to have to be on it defensively or we're going to struggle, because I don't see Arsenal giving much away, which means we're going to have to be very clinical. And whilst I say I'm pretty confident, the more I think about it, I don't know why I'm so confident, because we're really going to have to be at it. But I kind of believe in change of fortunes, Chris, and I do think, although we can do better, I think we've been very unlucky in front of goal as well at times. I think we've it's bound to change a wee bit there and for us. So I'm confident we can get someone on Sunday. I'm sure we'll speak about it before we go off.
Hey, Gareth, do you think we should man mark Saliba, Gabriel, and Havertz on set pieces on Sunday?
Craig, you've got a piece on the goal from last year, haven't you?
Yeah, we'll come on to that one, Terry, because that kind of forms part of this. I don't know if people are winding us up, but is Odegaard out Sunday? We shouldn't really worry about the opposition.
We're Norway playing. We're Norway playing.
Yeah. Apparently, I don't know whether people are winding. There's a couple of gooners in the chat, but somebody said Odegaard went off injured. So,
if he got injured tonight, I seen Fiore got injured last night. Rice is suspended, and we could have a fully fit team. So there's no excuses, really, have we?
Yeah. Well, no, that's the worrying thing, isn't it? Right, this one's just obviously another one from last year. A game, but this is pulled back. I mean, I don't know if there's much to analyse here, Gareth. This was pulled back from this way against Salah there. It's difficult from pictures. I know it looks like the players are just standing still, and I think this is Romero here. Much to say about this, or is just
look at Emerson Real's position. That's the scariest one. Look where he is. I mean, he's completely.
Is this Emerson over here? Or I thought that was a supporter in the crowd had run on. He's so don't know where he is.
They were both watching.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good point, Gareth.
But that's the one thing to take from that. His position, he's completely out of the game. I think at this stage, this was probably the worst of Ange we seen last year. We were getting run ragged at times. I think that Chelsea game, the Liverpool game, I think that Arsenal game really took a lot of it knocked the stuffing out of us. We played Liverpool, we played Chelsea on the Wednesday or Thursday after, and we didn't turn up, and we didn't really turn up here either. I think that Arsenal result really hurt the team. We had Newcastle, whereas around that time we got bashed as well. I think confidence was really brittle at times here, I remember when this game was 4-0, I was thinking this could be any score. I was thinking this could be 7, 8, 9 here. But we actually come back. I think Richarlison come on and changed the wee bit in that game. And funny enough, towards the end of the game, you were thinking if we get one more, we could get a draw in this game. It was a very strange. Liverpool were kind of a bit like that last year at times when there were certain games when the difference was they had a bit more stability at the back at times with Van Dijk, a bit more of a leader. But I think at times Liverpool were getting themselves involved in massive high scoring games, and I think that's the one difference you see in Liverpool this year so far is yes, they're scoring goals, but they look a lot more stable at the back. And I think the problem that Klopp had towards the end with Liverpool was he was up against a Man City and Arsenal team that they were getting so many points that Liverpool were conceding that many goals. It's difficult to compete. And Chris, that would be the worry for Ange is Spurs are going to need to score a hell of a lot of goals unless they fix this. If we're serious about challenging for the league, winning league titles, you can't be conceding 50 goals a season, because you're going to have to score over 100, and if you're looking at Man City and Arsenal, you're going to be hitting around 90 points. That means you can only drop 24 points all season. So we got to be better at the back, and I know Ange is trying to fix things piece by piece. Maybe the defense is the last part of this. He's thinking if we get the attack booming this year, we fix the defense next year. But Chris, or managers plan in advance, but things can change very quickly in football. If Spurs were to finish 7 for 8 this year, he would be very fortunate to keep his job, and I'm a big supporter of him. But he needs to focus on being competitive this year. And if that means we have to take a step back, then maybe that would be wise. But I don't think that he will. I think he'll live and die by the sword.
How would you compare Ange Postecoglou to Bielsa? Because, of course, everyone enjoyed, the neutral fans. I think a lot of us enjoyed watching Leeds that season with the entertaining attacking football they played, but so poor defensively, so open. How would you pick them apart, Gareth? How would you compare them?
Well, Bielsa done that man for man as well, didn't he? And it caught everybody off guard at the start. And they had that brilliant season where they finished, I think it may have been 8th or 9th in the league. I remember they were going to Old Trafford and getting beat 6-2, and everyone was saying, "Oh, brilliant!" They watched and it was great and all. And eventually it ran out, and I think Spurs put the final nail in his coffin, didn't they? We have 4-0 defeat. He got sacked after that. And it was a big part of the reason Leicester went down. I think the biggest difference, Chris, with that is Spurs have a lot more quality than that Leeds team did. Leeds probably overperformed. Certain players overperformed, like Bamford and players like that, where he was scoring a lot of goals, whereas this Spurs team have a lot more quality in it, and they're able to dominate games a lot more than that Leeds team were. And the funny, Leeds were quite profligate at times as well, and they were punished. So I hope we aren't going the same way in that respect. But I just think we have a lot more quality, so it's you can back it a bit more. I always thought with Leeds, unless they sign better players to go into that second season, they were going to struggle, and that's exactly what happened. And they actually lost players as well. I think Rafinha left, didn't they, to Barcelona, and that's the problem that they had, and they weren't able to replace that quality in the attacking area, and the defense just got completely brutalized at times. And the proof will be in the pudding this year, Chris. We and if we're sitting here in November, December time mid-table, then I don't see a situation where he'll be here next season. But I really don't think that'll happen. I think we'll get better as we go on. I do think there's a lot more. There's a lot more stability about us in terms of the players we have, and I think the manager's being backed as well. Yes, we would like more, but I do think we can go on and add better players and more quality to this. And I said to you, Chris, we done that viewers thing last couple of weeks ago, and I says, do you still think we're 1 year away from where Ange wants us to be? I still think he thinks he'll say one thing to the media and the fans and the club for the mentality purpose, but I still think he's probably thinking if we get top 4 this year and even won a trophy, that will be a remarkable season, and then we go in our 150, 200 million in the summer, and we really kick on and try and challenge, because we spoke about gaps in the market, and we spoke about it in the chat the other day about Pep's coming in the end, Liverpool's Jurgen Klopp's gone. It's only really Arsenal. Of course, you'd expect Man City to still be around, but to the level they are now, it'll be very difficult for them to replicate that under a new manager. There will be an opportunity there. Spurs struck in that opportunity when teams were struggling, like Wenger's back end, and Liverpool were going through a really tough time. United struggling after Ferguson. Spurs got that gap in the market, but they didn't get over the line. They finished second and third, and that's kind of what we need, Chris, because I think if Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool are all at their best, it's going to be very difficult for us to win leagues no matter how good we are. So I think we need that gap, and I think that gap's probably coming in the next 12 to 24 months. So we need to be in the right position to strike, and I think that's what we're aiming towards.
Craig, just before we move on to the next one, just wanted to ask Terry, ask your opinion about James Maddison so far this season. He's had 6 shots so far in the 3 games that he's played, 3 on target. He's provided 2 assists. He's had a lot of the ball, 237 touches, 16 in the opposition box, and he has created 7 chances, the same amount as Kulusevski, which is the most of any Spurs player so far this season. Of course, huge disappointment for him not getting into the England squad for the Euros in the summer. What have you made of Maddison so far in these 3 games?
Yeah, he's starting to show some of the signs of the Maddison that we loved in the first 10 games last year. Right? I think I don't think he's quite at that level yet, but in terms of kind of his creativity, his confidence on the ball, I think a little bit of his drive, I feel like that's back, and that was really lacking in the second half of last season. I really like Maddison, both just as a player, just as a person too. The way he speaks in his interviews, I think he's a really stand-up guy. I feel like he really has taken this England snub to heart, and that's really motivating him here. I hope to see him kind of recover back to speed. I've heard some say that, especially after the last game, that he's been a little off this season. I haven't really seen that. I feel like he's been quite a positive for us this season.
Yeah. Hopefully it will continue. Yeah. Craig, the next one.
Okay, same game. I don't think you can actually see the ball in this shot, but this is Cody Gakpo. He's going to eventually win a header that's come in from over in this sort of area just prior to this. Now, for me, I think this is Van der Ven, Gareth, isn't it? But
no, I think that's Romero. Van der Ven's to the left of Romero. Because I can see number 37 there, is it? I think that's Van der Ven. Yeah,
yes,
there.
You're right. Yes. So this is Romero, beg your pardon. Yeah, that makes sense because he's on the right. But Cody Gakpo wins the header and scores. Now, for me, even if he misses it, both players miss it, there's a player behind him, totally unmarked.
I think that's Paul running back there at the left-hand side of the screen. Where he should be beside Romero covering Diaz.
High-risk football.
Yeah. And again, the whole defensive line's wrong. Look where our back four is. They're all out of sync. There's no line there at all. Royale, left back, Van der Ven.
There is. It's just a bendy line.
Dare I say it, Craig? Let's come to you on this point. Do you think at some point Spurs fans are going to start getting yump about conceding so many goals? Because, of course, at first, not a lot of people really worry about the goals that we concede because it's all right, we're scoring more up the other end. Do you think there's going to be a point where some people are going to get frustrated with this?
I think people already are. Some sections of the fan base are already frustrated. And look, it's interesting. If you continually win games, still concede goals, it doesn't really matter, does it? It really doesn't matter. You could turn around and say, look, it's going to bite us on the bum eventually, but we keep winning games, so don't worry about it. But the thing is, we're not winning all our games, are we? And there's still major flaws here and major issues to address. Now, obviously, this is last season. We've only had 3 games this year, so it may well have been worked on and got better. I've seen signs it's got better. But I think there will be parts of the fan base that will start to lose patience. Not necessarily. I don't think it all rides on the North London derby on Sunday. I really don't, because Arsenal are a good team. We know we're going to be in a game, that's for sure. I think for me, it's more about the next 3 games after that: the Carabao Cup, the Carabao fixture, and the next league game. So it can't just be about one game.
The only thing I would say, Craig, is that if we were to win the derby on Sunday, it would bring a lot of people that are on the edge back, and they support Nines. We could win the next 3 games after that, but the North, you'll know better than me, being from the area. The North London derby means so much to Arsenal and Spurs fans. And I mean, I think if Spurs beat Arsenal, there'll be question marks over Arteta. That, even though he's got so much more credit in the bank because of where they finished, but there's still some Arsenal fans that question Arteta. And Spurs were to go and beat them on Sunday, you'd hear that sort of part of Arsenal's fan base cranking up again, because they were fortunate to beat Aston Villa. Only Ollie Watkins had an absolute stinker in front of goal. They should have been 2-0 down. 2 open nets they must. Realistically, at any other weekend of the season, he would have scored. So, I think this is a massive game for both teams. And I think winning North London derby can buy you so much time. And, if we were to lose this game 3 or 4-1 on Sunday and we were to get cut to pieces, I think a lot of fans that were even back in Ange would start to question if this is going the right way. So I think this is a huge game for Ange. Look, I'm behind him 100%. But if we were to lose and be cut to pieces on Sunday, you'd think, well, how can you support them defensible? So I'm really hoping we get the one on Sunday, just to not obviously when he won the game, beat Arsenal, but just for Ange, because he does need we haven't had a big result under Ange for quite some time now. We had that great start to the season. If you look at our second half of the season, any big team we played, other than Villa away, it was probably the only one. And people would maybe put Villa in that bracket of a Liverpool, a Man City, and Arsenal. We haven't done it. So I think he could do a massive one, and one in style as well. And we do play in style. But if we could beat Arsenal 3-1 on Sunday, and it was a completely one-way traffic game, and Spurs dominated a team like Arsenal, it brings a lot of the fan base that are on the edge back on the Ange Postecoglou kind of fanfare. And I think that result as well gives the players so much more confidence.
Terry, can I come to you on this? Because Mauricio Pochettino... Sorry, Gareth, I thought we lost you for a couple of seconds. Terry, let's come to you.
I think Madison says... Sorry, Chris. I think Madison says after the Everton game, it's days like the Everton day where it makes you think the manager knows what he's talking about. And I think if we beat Arsenal in style on Sunday, it gets more buy-in again from the players.
Terry, let's come to you. How much credit does someone have in the bank? Because we saw that Mauricio Pochettino was sacked in November, having taken Spurs to the Champions League final on the 1st of June. We didn't spend a penny in transfer windows in 518 days. You would have thought that Pochettino would have had enough credit in the bank to keep his job and be given the money for a proper rebuild going forward. Now, a lot of people are saying that, the way that we're conceding goals, the way that we're not scoring the goals that we should be. Of course, I think a lot of balanced fans are seeing progression, but there are a lot of fans that are extremely frustrated. Gareth's mentioned there that there will be pressure on Ange Postecoglou if he doesn't win or if we lose badly against Arsenal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday. I feel that, whatever happens in the next 4, 5, 6 games, if they were all an absolute disaster, the next 4, 5, 6 games, does the manager need time? Does he need patience? And does he need more tools in transfer windows in the future? Or is it time to put the pressure on? Because we can't keep going through manager after manager after manager, surely.
That's spot on. That's spot on. I know it's a big game. It's probably the biggest game of the season, but it's the fourth game. It's the fourth game of the season. We have to give him some credit in the bank. It's one season, even 2 seasons isn't enough. Look back at Mikel Arteta. Look back at Klopp. Even Pep, when he first started at Man City, it took a while to get used to the philosophy. It took a while to mold the team in their philosophies here. I mean, what's the alternative? We lose really poorly the next, let's say 4 games, just hypothetically, and we switch coaches. This entire squad has been built in Ange's image. So you'll be stuck with a coach who has players that were completely built up for a previous coach. I mean, we spent the last 3 windows trying to clean up the players that Mourinho and Conte had brought in. It makes zero sense to put any kind of pressure on Ange at this point when we backed him to the point where it's finally getting to a squad that he trusts, he knows, and can work with. It doesn't make any sense at all to me. I get the frustration, but I don't understand the lack of patience. I really don't.
I was going to ask Terry, I don't know how much time you spend on social media, but are you surprised by how much negativity there has been towards Ange and some of these players in the opening 3 games?
Yeah, because of that, I try to stay away from social media. At this point, it's only after wins that I'll go on just to hear some of the plaudits. But I really don't understand the lack of the patience. When I see tags like Ange out, it's crazy to me. I feel like I understand the frustration, but I feel like it's just very short-sighted. Like you can't plan kind of week to week or month to month, or have knee-jerk reactions week to week, month to month. It's a years-long process. It's a multi-transfer levels process. Let's say we brought in Klopp next week. He would struggle because the players wouldn't fit his system. It would take a while for us to be up and running in Klopp's system here. There is no better alternative at this point. We have to back Ange 100%.
Craig, back to you.
Okay, this one is going to sting a bit. This is the Chelsea game. This is Conor Gallagher just swinging it over. And obviously this is their first goal. So, Gareth, this is a complete and utter bleep show, isn't it? I mean, this is the eventual goal scorer. And if he misses it, somebody behind him, what is going on here?
Yeah, the first thing I would say about it was a fantastic header, by the way. It wasn't an easy chance, but our whole setup here is so wrong. I'm not sure if I think we're trying to do a bit of man-to-man and zonal at the same time here, because there is certain players marking, and then we've nobody covering the back post, which is crazy because most goals from crosses like this are scored at the back post, and we've got 3 against 1 at the back post. And I think there was a brief VAR check in this goal, wasn't there, for blocking from Cucurella, but I didn't see anything wrong with it. And just again, the whole setup, I'm not sure if this was confidence issues because we were conceding so many from set pieces and we were all just kind of switching off and kind of didn't know what they do. But at this stage of the season, we were conceding a goal at least every game from a set piece. And that was a huge, huge issue. It was almost like that Man City goal in the FA Cup set a blueprint for teams to expose us, because after that, I think the next week we went to Everton and conceded 2 set piece goals, and week on week there was set pieces going on kind of from February right through to the end of the season. I try to explain most things well tonight, but I just can't. I'm lost for words here because it's just so poor. I don't know what the plan was here, because we've got 2 players in the middle. I think Richarlison and Van de Ven there, and we've got Emerson Real. Them 3 players I think are trying to mark that zonal area, that if the ball drops anywhere around the penalty spot, Romero's marking somebody. If it drops anywhere around that penalty spot, they'll deviate. But they've just completely negated the back post. because Porro's with Cucurella, so that means there's 2 runners at the back post. The ball drops anywhere near there, we're relying on the player missing or the goalkeeper making a save because there's no one there and there's no one even on the space. So they're not marking zonally or man marking that area. So that's just a massive lapse in judgment and a huge error. Again, it's hard to know because we don't sit there and through it, but I don't think the manager and the coaching staff would set them up like that because that's just so basic that it wouldn't be must. So again, I can only think that the players just haven't done what they've been asked to do there. I mean, that's the only explanation because we're all sitting here looking at it and we can all see it's wrong. So
yeah, I'm
sure the coaching staff can see it. There's no way. I don't think they'd be asked to be set up like that. So I think out of all the set piece goals we conceded last year, this one and the Arsenal goal we're going to see after this, Craig, are the 2 worst.
Yeah.
Let's move on then. This is obviously against Arsenal last year. This is pretty route one, really, for Arsenal. Ball over the top into the space and Saka's running onto it. So,
Craig, very similar to the Newcastle goal. Again, there's no pressure on the ball. There's no compactness because look at the midfield. There's gaps everywhere. There's no balance because nobody's on that side. Just completely cut to pieces. And then when Saka gets in that area against Ben Davis, you only knew there was going to be one outcome. Ben Davis shows him on side. I think Gary Neville was commenting on this game, and he says, it was a game. He says it was a game he did when he was going towards the back end of his career that retired him on his head. And I think this moment here was probably the moment Ben Davis probably thought it's time to give it up because I know he's still part of the squad, but I don't think he can play left back again because not just Saka, but if that was against an Elise, a Pedro Neto, I don't think Ben Davis can react it because he's not at that level anymore. They deal with those kind of players, and I kind of knew that yes, there's so much wrong that goes on before it, but once it came down to that 1v1 area, we were in serious trouble. But again, all them principles of defence that we spoke about earlier with the Newcastle goal are the same. No pressure on the ball, no compactness, no delaying, and no balance in the team. And once you don't have any of those, Craig, it's impossible to defend.
To be fair, Saka did have a fair bit to do before he scored. It wasn't just one touch and in, but yeah, that's I mean, it was a good pass. You have to say that as well, of course.
Yeah, from here, right? I think that's Bentancur in the middle there. Bentancur or Porro, one of those have to engage the player that plays Odegaard on the ball because the player on the furthest side of the pitch there can cover the running behind. And then what we would probably need is Ben Davis to get out to Saka quicker, at least shut down the space. At least if he can get out quicker to him and on the touchline before he comes inside, it would help the delay because that's the only thing we can do. Is delay because we've got no compactness, and with no balance, so we have to try and delay or put pressure on the ball, and we didn't do any of that, and that's where it made it impossible to defend, really.
Yep. We'll just move on again, Chris. I don't know if you want to take this one. This is obviously Arsenal's another Arsenal goal here, and it's Kai Havertz that scores this, and I think this is Kai Havertz, and he just ghosts in here. As we've said when we were looking at these, obviously totally zonal there, 5 players in there waiting for the ball to come in, and of course it drops into this sort of area here.
Yeah, because when this setup's a bit easier to explain, Craig, than the Chelsea one because you can see what they're trying to do here. They're doing man marking and zonal, so somebody's marking Gabriel there, whoever does in front of him. I can see Gabriel, number 6 there. He was Arsenal's most dangerous player from set pieces last year. So somebody's marking him. There's also somebody marking Saliba, the number 2. And we've got, is that Kulusevski marking Havertz? I think
it's Kulu marking Havertz, and I think that's Porro marking. Yeah, it's Porro.
Yeah, so we've got the other players, Van de Ven, I think that's Højbjerg, and could be Lo Celso, was it at the front post? I'm not sure.
There's Romero here.
Van de Ven they has right, then it's Højbjerg's closest to the post, and I'm not sure who the other player is in front of Højbjerg. But they're doing the zonal marking of the front post. And then we've got Ben White that's on the goalkeeper, and that was another issue that I'm very surprised that wasn't looked at before the Spurs game because Ben White was causing a lot of goalkeeper issues for a lot of teams last year. And that was completely left I mean, that's the one thing you can say here. There's nobody has been asked here. They look after Ben White and push him away from Vicario. So Vicario is now rooted the spot. Kulusevski completely switches off. If he's man marking Havertz, then he has to go with Havertz. If Havertz moves, forget about the other defenders marking that zone. If Kulusevski's been specifically, because Havertz is one of their biggest threats, he has to go on. He just saunters across. Kulusevski stays, I think, and he gets in between Romero and Van de Ven for the goal. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's in here. Yeah. It was just too. There was too many people in the same area to actually bother showing it, but we all know what happened, so I don't think we need to see it again.
That can't happen on Sunday, or we're in big trouble.
Yeah, that was an extremely quiet Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I tell you what, that was extremely quiet, going 3-0 down.
But I mean, that shot us in the foot, Chris, because it was never a 3-0 game when that goal went on. It was fine. Yeah. It was the 40th minute, and like Spurs played all the football at times, and it was just crazy, and that can't happen. I mean, if we play Arsenal off the pitch on Sunday and get beat 3-1 because we give away 3 goals and set pieces, you can't defend it anymore. That type of, as much as I want to defend Ange and I love the style of play, but if we lose a game because we can't defend set pieces, then he has to take responsibility as well.
Well, it's a weird one, Gareth, because whenever I talk to you off these streams, you're extremely positive. You're a positive Spurs fan. You want it to work for Ange Postecoglou. I think if people haven't seen you or heard you on this channel before, you've probably come across as quite negative and very critical today from a lot of these shots that we've seen, a lot of these pictures that we've been going through. To try and get some positivity back, from what you've seen so far, the way that we've defended set pieces this season compared to a lot of these images that we've looked at from last year, can you see the positives? Can you see that we are defending a lot better? Because also it's fair to say that Nick Montgomery is now in charge of set pieces, both attacking and defending.
Well, we haven't considered a goal from set piece yet this season so far. But again, it's you're picking from a very narrow selection of 3 games, and I don't remember Leicester and Newcastle having loads and loads of corners against us. If anything, Spurs had loads of corners in these games. The one thing that sticks out from the first 3 games, in my opinion, was that series of corners that Everton had in the first half towards the end of it, where there's 3 or 4 corners and we look ropey from every single one of them. Now, I know and Everton are a big physical team, and that's kind of one of their best routes to goal. But Arsenal, when they're not playing well, they exploit these set pieces, and there's no excuse. And as it says, you're probably right, Chris. Looking at this tonight, you're probably getting very critical of it, but I can't defend the indefensible. And if we haven't learned the lessons from last season, then it's very hard for me to come on here and support Ange as much as I want to. I have to be balanced. I have to be, I'll not sit here and be delusional, even though if it suits my agenda, I'm very much, I'll say how it is. But what I would say is, Chris, I think it's easy fixed. I think it's much harder to develop an identity and a style of play than it is to defend set pieces. I think this can be fixed. The style of play and the creating the chances is the hardest part. I think we're doing that quite well. Or even our playing out from the back has been quite good at times, and we've seen a lot of goals. I was worried after the Bayern Munich pre-season game because we looked awful, but we've got our players back and now our first sort of 11s available. It looks so much better. But I think the general play has been outstanding at times. So if we just brush up at the back, everybody remains concentrated, and we deal with these set pieces, then we have every chance of beating Arsenal on Sunday, because from what I've seen in the first 3 games, we've played better football than Arsenal. So as long as we do our job defensively and do the basics, I know it's easy to say do the basics, but these players are more than capable of doing it. We have every chance of beating Arsenal on Sunday.
Guys, looking at this picture right here, other than someone being mindful of Ben White, what would you guys do differently?
Well, you'd have to have a player on Ben White pushing him out, because he's just causing, if he doesn't touch Vicario, and as long as he's not offside, I think he actually has a wee tug at his glove, and then he moves away. So he's smart enough to get out of the offside way. Somebody just has to push him out of the road. I would have a Højbjerg, for example. He would be quite physical. I would just shoulder to shoulder, push him away. You're not going to give a penalty away, pushing somebody, a nudge. Just nudge him out of the road. I think Arsenal in this game bullied us at times, and that was the difference from these pieces. They bullied us, and we kind of had no response. And I think that's one of the things that maybe we haven't, where we were on the wee bit under Conte at times. We're not a nasty team, Craig or Chris or Terry. I think we're a very nice team. And I think
tactical aggression.
we need to be about, that I mean, that's clever what Ben White did, the little tug on the glove. I wish one of our players was doing that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not going to be pulled up because it's only a wee tug on the glove. So now Arsenal knew every trick in the book last year, but look, they had a set piece coach, we didn't. So I can only assume that this is going to be, it can't be any worse than it was on Sunday. This Sunday, that Sunday there was a disaster. For how well we played in that game, we deserved something out of the game, and we shot ourselves in the foot. And it can't happen this Sunday.
Craig, is that the last one?
No. There's another one, sadly. What I would say, I think this is all right. I think this is okay.
Yeah.
I just don't like zonal marking. I think it leads players. It gives players the opportunity to pass players over that are in their area. But I think it leads to lazy defending. But that's just my opinion. This is just. Go on, Gareth.
No, it's looking like Odegaard's injured there. He's completely been taken off the pitch here and he's not walking properly. So it looks like Odegaard and Rice are missing on Sunday.
Wow.
That will be good. Obviously, this is another one. This is the eventual goal scorer here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 defenders around him, and he scores. What can we say about this one?
Again, Craig, I think this is a common theme from set pieces as well. Whilst we're being, nobody wants to go and attack the ball. We're all standing there waiting for somebody else to do it. Nobody takes charge. I don't see any player. I think even that Everton game, I seen it. It was a lot of times we were waiting for somebody else to come on and head it, and it was bobbling around the box, and nobody wanted to take responsibility. I do think we lack a wee bit of leadership at the back because we've got so many young players. I think Romero's seen as that player to go and do it, but all or not, I think Van de Ven is a very, very good footballer, and he's intelligent, reads the game, he's quick, but I don't think he's a leader of such that he's going to go and bully it. He's very good at tackling at times, but I don't see that kind of huge amounts of aggression on him. Udogie and Porro aren't that type of player. Bissouma, I don't think's the most, I don't think he's a cruncher on there. Bentancur's a technical player, Madison's technical, Bergville's technical. And our attackers aren't going to put, so I think we're a wee bit weak in that sort of area, but that's the way Ange wants us to play with the technical players. So there's going to be a wee bit of a give and take there, but I do think we need to be braver. And the fact that Vicaria's staying on his line now tells me that either he hasn't got the confidence to come and deal with himself, or he's been told to stay put. But I kind of like my goalkeeper coming and doing something, Chris. I do think it's very dangerous to stay on your line, because if you stay on your line and the ball's planted in any side of you, it's very difficult to react in time, and you're relying on your defenders to go and deal with it. So I think Vicario needs to be a bit braver coming for the ball, because apparently there is this new rule this year where they're protecting the goalkeepers a wee bit more. They're not going to the person's being watched. So if anything, he should be coming off that line a bit more. But in the 3 games I've seen him, he's rooted to the spot.
This is the final one, just before I hand you back to Chris. Again, this is West Ham away last season. This is the eventual goal scorer. Look, we know people can score from corners, but the sheer amount of players we've got in and around, it's just I don't know what team is doing there.
All these clubs that you've shown here are from April and May. This was game after game after game. We played West Ham, then we played Newcastle, then we played Arsenal, then we played Liverpool or Chelsea, then we played Liverpool. This is all in the space of 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I think we can see where the issues were, and hopefully they've been addressed. So we'll just wait to see how we get on Sunday. So I hope you enjoyed that little interlude. We'll try and do a few more of those. So back to Chris.
Yeah, thank you for that, Craig. I appreciate it. Terry, let's come to you. Before we talk about the Arsenal game, which we'll talk about finally, the leaders, the guys mentioned there about leaders on the pitch. Who are the leaders for you in this Spurs squad?
I mean, clearly Son, Romero, and Madison. You'll see that I feel like this has been a kind of a negative show around Romero and kind of exposing some of the frailties that he's brought to some of the games. But I feel like Romero has been one. I guess you guys use that term, kind of taking the game by the scruff of the neck. There's been a couple of times where it feels like he's been the only one to really do that. I'd actually like to see Son do a bit more of that. Other than that, it's hard to see anybody really kind of stepping up, really kind of trying to change the flow of the game themselves. Outside of the three of them, the only one that really comes to mind for me is Kulusevski. I feel like he does that at times, and he'll take on a little bit more responsibility than others on the team. That is one area where I do think we are lacking a little bit is that leadership.
I think you're right, Terry. It probably has come across as quite negative, particularly when we've showed so many clips from last season, the back end of last season, when we weren't getting the results that we were at the start of last season. But hopefully that has improved, our defensive side of the game. In the Argentina national press in the last couple of days, they've been talking about Christian Romero and said he's a beast. He doesn't lose one duel. There is no better centre-back in the world than Romero these days. And of course, we've heard many times about Lionel Messi, what he has said about Romero. Let's take the final question, the final point from the podcast. The Arsenal game, of course, takes place 2 p.m. at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday. Craig, it does now look like, we know Rice is definitely out, suspended. It looks like Odegaard is now going to miss the game. What an opportunity this is. Arsenal losing two of their best players. How are you feeling ahead of it? What do you think Ange will change, if anything? Van der Ven, Solanke, hopefully they will be back. But any other personnel changes for you?
Probably not. I think it's important that I've said before, Van der Ven coming in. He's such a massive, massive player for this system. Solanke coming in, it sounds like he was close against Newcastle, but they just didn't want to risk him. But we really could have done with him in there, because I think he would have got 2 or 3 goals actually against Newcastle. Odegaard and Rice out. That's a big loss for Arsenal, but they have got quality all over that team. I'd have preferred it if one of the centre-backs was out, if you're giving me a choice. But look, beggars can't be choosers. Look, we've got a chance. We have got a chance. And we'd have had a chance if they'd both played. If you're asking me for a score, I'm going to say 2-2. I would take 2-2 now. I think that's where we are at the moment. Arsenal are a better side than us at the moment. I think you've got to be realistic. But this is a chance for us to, do something against Arsenal, put down a statement. And I'll hope for a win, but I'm going to say draw.
I hope the atmosphere is absolutely electric like it was in that 3-0 win under Antonio Conte a couple of years ago, because that place was absolutely unreal that evening. And I think the crowd could have a real input in this game. Gareth, in terms of personnel changes, do you expect any others than the ones I've mentioned? Solanke coming back, Van der Ven coming back in. You mentioned Dragushin earlier. What do you make of that situation? Because it does seem pretty harsh that he comes in, he plays well in a Spurs shirt. We've seen him play international level as well, done extremely well. Comes back to Spurs, doesn't really get the game time. Turned down Bayern Munich to join Tottenham. When's he going to get those run of games? Is it fair on him?
No, well, that's it. I mean, based on last week's performance, he should play, shouldn't he? But I don't think he will. We were on just before the Newcastle game, and I predicted the team buying on. I says he would bring Kulusevski onto that right side, and he would bring Sarr back in, and he did that. And I says it'll be Solanke up front if he's fit, and if not, it'll be Son for the middle, and he'll play Odegaard on the left. So with buying on with that, I do think that he's going to go bold against Arsenal, especially now that Rice isn't playing. I think he's going to really go for it. I think he's going to play Maddison, Kulusevski, and Bissouma in the midfield 3. I don't think he'll play Sarr. I think he's going to go really bold. And the fact that Odegaard's out now, he will be thinking this is a huge opportunity to really get at Arsenal. Because let's be honest, we went for it last year against them, and Arsenal had us in a counter-attack and set pieces. So Spurs had a lot of the ball, and I think Arteta will be pretty happy to sit off and wait for Spurs to make mistakes, and hopefully they do. Away from home. He did it at Man City last year, didn't he? He went there and he got the draw, and he went to Spurs and got the 1. So he's not so much, he's flexible enough to change where his hands. I think it's only one way of playing, isn't he? So we've seen that last year when he went to Man City away with 5 or 6 key players, mustn't he? He says we're still going to go at them. So I think it'll be Vicario, Porro, Romero. Although I would prefer Dragusin to play based on, if we're going on players that deserve to play, I think Romero should be dropped. But he'll play Romero and Van de Ven, Udogi left back, Basuma, Kulusevski, Madison, Johnson on the right, Son on the left, and Solanke through the middle. That'll be the team. And
Wouldn't it be nice?
I'm confident, you know, I really am. I know I've been sort of critical of the system, and I have to be honest, you know, it breaks my heart because I'm a big Ange supporter, but I had to be honest tonight. But I do think that the tide's turning, and based on changes of fortune, I think we're due a wee bit, and Arsenal's starts to look like all the games they played last year, and you know, wee bits that were going for them, although they didn't win the league. They had a fully fit team most of the season. It looks already this season that things are going against them. You think about the Rice red card, 9 times out of 10 you get away with that. Odegaard injured on international duty. That's 2 of their best players out of this game. And I think Craig's right. Even if they had played, they'd have still had a very difficult afternoon. You know, you think about that midfield now. Jorginho, Party, Marino's injured. He's still not available for them. So I'm not sure what they're going to do in midfield. Who comes on there? Jesus is touch and go. Calafiore got injured. They aren't for Italy. So they're missing a fair few players. And Arteta will be racking his brain there to think out what best midfield they play. I think Angel just sensed that Arsenal are for taking. So I'm going to go big and bold, Chris. I'm going to say Spurs are going to win 3-1.
Good stuff. Wouldn't it be nice to see Dominic Solanke get his first goal in a Spurs shirt?
I think you will.
Yeah. Terry, finally with you, this Arsenal game, how are you feeling ahead of it? And same question, do you believe that there will be any more personnel changes if Solanke comes in, Van de Ven comes back? Who would you expect to be in the starting 11?
Yeah, I'm going to agree 100% with Gareth's lineup there. I would love to see Kulusevski and Madison together in the midfield. I think that worked really well in the first game. Especially with Odegaard and Rice behind him. That is really, really pleasant news. I was surprised to hear that, and that really is a golden opportunity for us. The only place I differ, and this is going to be a bit controversial, I might start Odegaard over Son on the left side. I know that's never going to happen, but I want to see someone who can dribble past Ben White. I just don't see that right now with Son. He's very tentative. It seems like he's lost a step or two. I feel like Son could come on a bit later and provide a spark, and I think that would light a fire in him. Again, I know it's never going.
His record against Arsenal is incredible, but Son,
I know. I mean, he's my favorite player. Obviously, it's just I feel like I'm worried about him versus Ben White. Because I think both wings need to be working in conjunction with each other. We haven't seen that yet. Before this Odegaard news, I was gonna agree with Craig. I was gonna say 2-2. With him out, knowing that if Solanke and Van de Ven both are playing, I'm gonna cautiously, optimistically say 2-1 Spurs.
I think there's going to be a lot of goals in this game. I think I'm going to go for 3-2 Spurs. As I say, I think the crowd are going to play such a big part on Sunday. Terry, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And where can people find you on social media? What are you up to at the moment?
Kind of like I mentioned before, I'm not very active on social media. I really only subscribe to X to get news from some of the journalists and people like you out there. But I'll be there, at least for my time. It's 9 a.m. Sunday morning. Be there with a group of friends, really hoping for the best. I cannot wait. And it's been a pleasure. It was a pleasure talking to the three of you. Gareth, learned a ton today. Loved seeing all the screenshots. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We look forward to having you on again very soon. Thank you so much. And Craig, thank you so much for all of your input today. You've been great. Thank you so much for all of your work on this podcast in the last couple of years. Where can people find you?
No problem at all. No problem at all. It's mainly enjoyable on the whole, except when we really get stuffed. But, you have to take those. Yeah, I'm on X at Dearman9 if you want to give me a follow. That's great. Like Terry, I'm not very active. I don't post tons and tons, but it's usually Spurs related when I do. So yeah, let's hope for a victory on Sunday. Let's really hope we can. It could really kickstart our season if we get that win. So cautiously optimistic. But as I say, I'm going to stick with me 2-2, but hope for a win.
It's funny, actually. Before we went live, Terry said, I'll be available for a couple of hours. And I said, no, we won't be that long. 2-hour podcast again. Gareth, I'm putting that down to you. Thank you so much for all of your input.
Oh, no problem, Chris. You know me, anytime I shift my plans, there's a podcast on. Anything to do with Spurs especially. But no, brilliant being on. Really enjoyed the different kind of show night. It's always good to do different ones. Funny enough, the last 2 shows I've been on have been different to what we usually do. So done the viewer questions and I've done the analysis tonight. So really, really good. And I suppose it's different variety for people. Different people enjoy. I mean, I love doing the video analysis with the coaches as well. Like, so it's right up my street. So really enjoyed it. Hope everyone else enjoyed it. Shout out to Vandali in the chat. He's been here all night. Big Arsenal fan. He's been nothing but respectful. So Vandali, hopefully your weekend's terrible, sir. But because we need to change of fortune, us Spurs boys. But Chris, you know the crack. I do the 12th Man podcast. You can find me on there. You can find me on @Gareth Hotspurs. We'll probably be doing a North London Derby podcast this Friday as we cover all Premier League, but that is the big game of the weekend. So we'll have Spurs, Arsenal fans on chatting about the game. I'm sure you'll be doing something somewhere as well. So be sure to watch that as well. But thanks for having me on as usual, Chris. And come on, you Spurs on Sunday. I've just got a really, really good feeling about this one.
Yes, as Gareth said, it's going to be a very, very busy week. We've got podcasts booked every single day up until the North London Derby. And I think I'll be getting more nervous as the days go on. But let's hope for a win on Sunday. Craig, Gareth, Terry, thank you so much for your input. Thank you so much for watching and listening, everyone. And thank you so much for all of your incredible support as always. And we will see you on the next one. Until then, come on, you Spurs.